kind of mimicked what Tennessee did. And so for Oklahomans to know, we put Oklahoma on a path to zero. Tennessee did this back in 2016. They thought it would take them 15 years and very similar. So when income goes up, it gradually takes a quarter of a point and it says, hey, we need to give that back to the people and lower income taxes. And then you modestly grow government. And Tennessee got it totally eliminated in 5 years because the businesses started flocking there because they knew it was a business-friendly environment. So I don't know how long it'll take, but we immediately cut it a quarter of a point this year. And we put them on that path to zero. Behind the meter, we talked about that in my State of the State. I think it's a huge game changer for us. Business, I'm going to go tomorrow. I'll be down in Chickasha and meeting with some of the folks. We'll do a ceremonial bill signing and some people that are building behind the meter to bring more jobs into the state of Oklahoma because of that bill signing. So really excited about that. Business courts. We've talked about this all session long. I talked about it at the State of the State. I said, guys, we've got to get business courts done. We were able to get that across the finish line. The reason that's important, 68% of Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in the state of Delaware, and Delaware has business courts. That's really what we copied. And Texas just set up business courts. 80% of new public companies, IPOs are all Delaware incorporations. So we're going to have a big marketing campaign to let the business community, to let the CLEs, the continuing education, let the law groups understand what's happening now. So when you're setting up a new fund, when you're setting up a new company, we want them incorporated in the state of Oklahoma. So we're working on that. We'll have a ceremonial bill signing as well, because there's Oklahoma companies that are going to delist, or not delist, but they're going to incorporate from Delaware back to the state of Oklahoma. Currently today, we'll have companies that'll do that. So we're excited about that as well. Fines, fees, and court costs. In my State of the State, I highlighted a story of John Stanfill. He's in Oklahoma who served time. And when he got out, like a lot of people that get out and serve their time, they're saddled with excessive fines, fees, and court costs. So it's been a passion of mine since I took office in 2019 to really lower that burden on people. And we want to get people out, back into second chances, to get back in the community. And we don't want to saddle them with, these chains that hold them back, basically. And so we were able to eliminate some of the fines, fees, and court costs on House Bill 1460. So that was really exciting. We also, this is kind of funny. I was at a birthday party, or it was a going away party for my nephew. And my niece came up to me and said, Uncle Kevin, she said, some of my friends at school want you to not ban cell phones in school. She's a sixth grader. And I thought that was pretty funny. But we eliminated the virtual days this year, I think, except for 2, which is important because we know that kids need to be in the classroom being taught by the great teachers across our state. And we eliminated the distractions. And so, again, just trying to promote and make sure that the teachers have a great classroom and an environment to be able to teach our young people and get them ready for the workforce. So we cleared hurdles for apprenticeships and internship programs for valuable work experience. We did some really good work for Oklahomans and made moves that really set Oklahoma apart as the best state for business in the country. So with that, let me open it up to questions.
Hi, Governor. Came down from Tulsa. If I could ask you two, because I don't know when I'll see you again. I'm glad you brought up the path to zero. I would have asked you about this sooner. Fox News sent a reporter to Mississippi to talk to Tate Reeves. His path to zero includes a 9-cent gasoline tax increase and a grocery tax increase. Have you considered finding alternative revenue sources to speed up your path to zero or anything like that?
I haven't. There's a lot of ways to do that. Some states, I think in the Fallon administration, they were looking at taxing alternative things. We've chosen not to do that. We've just chosen, as we have excess revenue, which we've had over the years, instead of just growing expenses, let's just say to ourselves, hey, we've collected too much money because we have a lot of other forms of taxes, and let's give a little bit of that back. So we're not trying to ever cut core services. We're just trying to slow the growth of government, and we're trying to modestly grow government. And I think a CPI index plus population growth is a good growth, level to think about. Colorado, that was one of the options that we were thinking about before the session started. Colorado has something in their constitution that limits the growth side and to those two things that I just said, which I really like.
Second question, with the end of session being so emotional and tumultuous, I'm wondering if you think you have any political capital left to do big things next year?
Well, we'll have to wait and see next year. Well, I'm glad that all the turmoil happened on May 30th or May 29th and not on April 30th. So feels like there's emotions ran high at the end, and sometimes that's politics. But we had everything already accomplished, and really at that point we were just trying to let Oklahomans know that man, there's 617 new bills. How can we come up with 617 new regulations or things that are going to be piled on Oklahomans' back? And so I vetoed probably, I think it was 68 bills, so about 10%. And the legislature chose to override 47 of those. But here's the deal. I tell the legislator all the time, listen, override them if you want. Nobody knows in my buddies in Jinx or Skytook, Oklahoma, or Wayne, Oklahoma, what a veto override is. But what's happening is you're growing government, and that's the problem that I have. So everything that I vetoed was just things that I felt like was going to grow government. It wasn't good for the taxpayer.
Governor, some lawmakers have expressed some thought that they didn't go far enough in addressing improvements to education, increasing teacher salaries, increasing access to affordable housing, child care, and just reducing overall poverty in the state in order to address those concerns.
Sure. Well, how do you reduce poverty? What's one? Because if you've got a way to reduce poverty, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I suppose increasing access to good jobs is one, increasing access to good education is another, increasing access to affordable healthcare.
Well, the job side, we're 100% agree. I didn't mention this in my opening monologue, but the two of the biggest economic development wins in our state history happened, I think it was in May. So we had EGA, Emirates Global Aluminum, is going to build a smeltering factory in Oklahoma. They haven't built a new smeltering factory in the United States. Nobody has in 45 years. And this company chose Oklahoma. So President Trump was in the Middle East. So that's going to create 1,000 jobs. We have a manufacturer that's coming into Oklahoma. It's going to create 350 jobs. And right now, our economy, we're top 10 in people moving here. So I think when I think about creating jobs, I think that lifts people out of poverty. Our unemployment rate is very, very low right now. We're pouring resources into retraining people with our career techs. So everybody that wants a job should be able to get a job in Oklahoma. But if you're thinking about a handout or something that, that's not, I think that ultimately creating a hammock for people to stay in a system is not good long-term for them, and it's not good long-term for the state of Oklahoma.
Governor, I have two quick ones. Number one, does your mental health interim commissioner have experience, and if so, what are their qualifications? And also, just a fun one here, what is your prediction for the 2025 NBA Finals?
On the finals, I'll say the Thunder in 5, right? Say the Thunder in 5. It's going to be exciting. Admiral Slavonic is an amazing Oklahoman. We're so lucky to have him. So I've known the Admiral for a long time. He was actually the chief of staff for Senator Langford. He was appointed in the first Trump administration as the assistant secretary to the Navy. So great guy, great Oklahoma, went to Oklahoma State. I think he went to OU Law School maybe, or is that right? UCO Law School, is that what you said? I'm sorry. Okay, his bio's on the website. Sorry, I better not quote what he's doing, but I know he went to Oklahoma State because Chief Justice Steve Taylor texted me, and they were buddies back in college, which I thought was very interesting. He says he's a great guy, and I agree. So then he worked in ODVA as the director of the Veterans Department here in the state. And so when the legislature fired Allie, that's when we went out. We tried to find, the very best person would come in and take this job. But no, I mean, he's not a mental health expert, and he's more of a business person. He's somebody that I think can do the job. But, if you make a very interesting question, what's the job description? Who are we supposed to hire? Because it gets hard when some of these really good people you're asking to come from the private sector to serve. And I try to find the very, very best people, because these are big CEO type jobs. You've got 2,000 employees. You run an $800 million budget. My direction is hold these vendors accountable to make sure the dollars are being used correctly, efficiently, to make sure that we're actually, being good stewards of the Oklahoma tax dollars. And, Chad Mariska, David Ostro, Kevin Corbett. There's been a pattern of removing good people running different state agencies, and it gets harder and harder to bring in people to run these agencies. I'm just so thankful that the Admiral stepped up to take this role, because it's an important role, and I know he's got a heart to serve Oklahomans, and I think he'll do a great job. And we've had nothing but positive comments from the legislature about the Admiral.
Hey, Governor, this kind of has to do with the recent firing. Last year, you led a campaign to disagree better, if I recall that, and that use words wisely when it comes to lawmakers. Last Thursday, your statement seemed to point out the senator's wife, called her out, basically, and lawmakers weren't happy about that. You regret using that statement? You think that's disagreeing better? And then one more question, just ahead of the bills on your desk, is that going to affect how you sign bills?
Yeah. The second question, not at all. We'll do as a team like we always do. We'll look at all these different bills and analyze them based on the merits. Is it good for the taxpayer? And then we'll make a decision on those bills. Do I regret? And I didn't use his wife's name. I just said, hey, his wife. And yes, I do regret that. I called and apologized to him and his wife, and I let the emotions get the better of me, and I should not have done that. So I called and apologized. And I guess the thing that it was my fault. I shouldn't have done it, and I've already called and apologized. I'm just trying to point out any kind of conflict. We have to make sure that, if you're in the pharmaceutical business, you shouldn't be running pharmaceutical bills. If you're in this industry, you shouldn't be running this bill. If you're in this industry, you can't run for the House or the Senate, and then it's going to benefit you. The National Guard bill is probably the thing that's the most disappointing, that got overridden, because what Oklahomans don't understand is that bill just created a new pension system. And I can explain that to you guys, but that one you guys got to report on, because that really is going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And I don't think people knew what they were actually voting on. And so it's just disappointing, but I should not have done that. I've taken responsibility, and I won't let it happen again. And I called that specific senator and apologized to him.
I wanted to ask you, there's a Dallas news outlet reporting right now about the Heartland flyer. I'm sure you've heard about those conversations. They're saying that Texas is not approving their end of the road there when it comes to funding. Have you had conversations with Tim Gas and lawmakers about, potentially what to do next? It's obviously something that comes up every year, especially around the Red River.
Yeah, I did. So Secretary Gatz called me and kind of gave me the update on that. Disappointing, because we were obviously supportive of that, but we can't carry that whole boat ourselves. And so I don't know exactly what will happen or when the funding runs out, but when TxDOT, they requested that funding, and the Texas legislature decided not to fund it. And so we'll see what we have to do on this side, but we're not going to pick up Texas boat. We're not going to pick up their end of that. And so we're not sure exactly what's going to happen with that connection down to Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Good afternoon, sir. This session between the St. Isidore ruling and the Bible mandate issued by the state superintendent, the new social studies standards, there's been a lot of talk about the role of religion in public schools. And I'm kind of wondering, where do you stand on that? How much should the Bible be taught in public schools?
Well, the St. Isidore is not a public school. That is a charter school, and you choose to go there. So the St. Isidore, that case is far from settled, that religious freedom case. It was a 4-4 tie by the United States Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett recusing herself. So there will be another case that pops up there because that thing is far from settled. And I truly believe that if there's a public benefit, and we've talked about this in here, if there's a public benefit, you can't discriminate against someone based on their faith or their religion. So that's how I think about it. That's why I believe in school choice. That's why I believe in more options for parents, because I do think that we're being naive to think that a parent doesn't want to put their values in their children. But as far as the public school is concerned, that's why I believe in school choice and putting parents in charge and not dictating at a public school, the faith piece of it. So that's kind of what I think. That's why I believe in the fundamental tax credits, open transfer, more charter schools, more ability for kids to go wherever the parents think they're going to get a better education. Operation Guardian, so I don't think so. When we announced Operation Guardian was Tim Tipton's in charge of that, and he put together a plan to work with the Trump administration for the criminal element that's here illegally that are actually committing crimes to get them out of our prisons. Nothing's happened at this point. I think we're still waiting on ICE detention to pick up some of the people that are going to be released fairly shortly. And we can take, I think there was 156 last count I saw that Oklahomans are paying their boat in our state facilities, that we want them out off the taxpayer dime. They're not supposed to be in our state anyway. And then I also had a call with Secretary Kristi Noem this week. She called about 20 governors talking about a request from the National Guard to help with ICE processing when they're picking up the criminal element, people that are breaking the law in the state. So we're looking at that as well. And I'll let you know as soon as we make a decision on that issue as well.
Yeah, Governor, good to see you. Looking forward, I think the next week or two, both the University of Oklahoma Board of Regents and the Oklahoma A&M Board of Regents and Governors OSU are going to meet. They typically meet at this time of year. Sometimes you go visit them, and I'm curious. I thought I'd ask you ahead of time your message this year. This is the meeting where they typically consider a tuition increase, and I know in years past you have not wanted to see that increase. So I'm curious where you stand philosophically now with higher education funding and investments being what they are. Do you have a message one way or another to those boards about tuition?
Obviously, they haven't brought that up to me, but if you just ask me, my gut feeling is no, we don't need a tuition increase at this point. I don't think we've gotten all the efficiency out of our universities, and so I would encourage the boards to continue to look for efficiencies, look for the professors, the tenured professors that maybe aren't teaching as many classes as they should. And so those are the things that I would continue to push before they did a tuition increase. The last thing that I want to point out is that National Guard bill. The reason I think that was a bad bill, I vetoed it, I'm surprised nobody asked me about it, is basically what that bill did. And it's very important that we understand that, because there's a lot of misinformation. But if you join the National Guard at 18, and you serve for 25 years, and your obligation is you serve 1 week in a month, and you serve 2 weeks in the summer. So let's say you are 25 years in the National Guard and you retire, you're 43 years old. Well, you have earned a retirement from the federal government, from the Army, for your 25 years of service as the National Guard. That kicks in when you're 60 years old, just like Social Security will kick in for Americans at, I think, 62, something like that. What we just did with that bill is you created a new pension plan that the state is going to pay for from 43 to 60, okay? So now the state is going to be funding a new retirement system for anybody that retires after 25 years. Haven't seen that being reported. So if you're a colonel, for example, in the National Guard and you retire That's about a $2,800 a month retirement. And if you're 43 when that happens, then that's a $600,000 benefit to you that you would not have gotten before that bill was passed. Does that make sense? If you're in the Air National Guard, I pulled some numbers for people that flew in the Air National Guard in Tulsa, for example, served their state. They did their service, and they have a 25-year retirement. Some of those are up to $6,500 a month that they get in retirement that normally would start. And remember, these people are doctors, they're lawyers, there's police officers, they're teachers, they may be somebody in this room, they work regular jobs and they're serving their state and their country in the capacity in the National Guard, which is great. We love that. But that's the problem is you put these things on a bill, you call it a National Guard bill, you call it this bill, a police, a fire, and everybody's afraid to kind of dig in to say, is this good for the taxpayer? And guys, if there's an unlimited budget over here, if the taxpayers have an unlimited wallet to spend, these are all great things. They're great ideas. Let's come up with more. Let's double their retirement. But if there is a limit to how much the taxpayers are willing to pay for all these new pension plans, then that was one that it was just an unforced error that we just gave away and created a whole new pension plan. There's no way to put that genie back in the bottle. Okay. That's why I veto this stuff, is because I'm trying to protect the taxpayers. I'm trying to make sure we don't put Oklahoma in a bad situation. So that'll be a $10 million, $20 million budget request ongoing that'll harm Oklahomans in the future by just costing more and more money. So that's why when I veto these 68 bills, those are generally the bills that I'm vetoing. Thank you guys so much.